Monday, June 23rd, and the Thunder rolls. The Oklahoma City Thunder, they get the job done. Their first, let me make sure people understand that is their first NBA championship. Seattle and Oklahoma City, why we're still explaining this, people, I have no idea. They are not the same. But the Thunder rolls last night, and they capture that first NBA championship. A fantastic series. A lot of stuff going on. An incredible finish on the PGA Tour yesterday. All kinds of fun stuff in the sports world, man. And this is that kind of tricky time, Mac, where they say it's the dog days, but so far it's not the dog days, and we've got plenty of stuff to talk about. How was your weekend, my brother?
Absolutely great. Got to go to a fun birthday party yesterday. Hey, check this out. Look at this. Little City Connect. How about that?
Not shying away. Hey, I knew that message was coming on the screen. Jimmy from OKC. What a night. I talked to him last night. He enjoyed the festivities, and as you should. And if you're a Thunder fan, we've talked about this multiple times. You have plenty of reasons to be excited about the future. This team is not going anywhere anytime soon. Just give me your overall thoughts on the series, Mac, and then we'll take the conversation from there. But I think we talked about this a lot. The true basketball fans expected a very competitive series, and that's exactly what we got.
Yeah, I mean, right down to the final game. I mean, it was very competitive. I mean, we've talked about it a lot. I mean, there were a lot of coaching decisions that were made during the series. One team making one change, coach having to figure out how to solve that one and do something different. So, I mean, it was a fun series to watch. I think it's the NBA kind of gets a little bit of a bad rap that it's a kind of an offensive league and they're just throwing up 3-pointers, and I think we saw two teams that have a different philosophy. One team a little more anchored in defense, and another team that wanted to run a little bit more. For me, it was really, really enjoyable. Again, not having to worry about my team winning, but it was a fun series to watch. Like you said, as a basketball fan, if you didn't enjoy that, then you're not really a basketball fan. Let's just be honest.
Yeah, I feel bad for the people that chose not to watch this series because there wasn't enough big names for them, or again, this fascination with fans that care about how much money the billionaires are making, which is the only people that the ratings really do impact. And a lot of storylines came out of last night. Obviously, when you glance through the box score, 7 minutes and 5 seconds. That's all we saw out of Tyrese Halliburton. About an hour and a half ago, it was confirmed what we all kind of knew last night, and seeing the replay that he did rupture the Achilles. 7 minutes and 5 seconds, 3 for 5 from the floor, 3 of 4 from the 3-point line. Halliburton was ready to go, and we talked about it going into Game 6. The Pacers had a decision to make as a franchise. What the next step after a calf strain typically is, and unfortunately we saw that to one of the game's most dynamic young players last night, and that's something that the Pacers are going to have to deal with in the offseason. Before we really dive into the game, I've got a bone to pick with the NBA, and I'm still pissed about it because yesterday morning, the morning of Game 7, we get the bombshell that Kevin Durant is traded to the Houston Rockets. I feel very safe saying this and very comfortable saying this, and we'll talk about the trade here in a little bit. But the fact that was allowed to come out the morning of Game 7, I think is complete and total bullshit and would have never happened under David Stern's leadership at atop the NBA. Why you allow something like that? And we're not talking about, hey, a couple of teams shifted some role players here for a couple of draft pick swaps. We're talking about one of the greatest scorers, ironically, with a tie to the Oklahoma City Thunder in Kevin Durant. And that's allowed to kind of upstage a game 7, no matter who's playing, no matter what you think of who's playing. I thought that was an absolute chicken shit move by the NBA to have that news come out yesterday.
Yeah, I was kind of, I mean, the rumor all week was that it was going to happen last week. It was kind of one of those things that was kind of building and that the Suns wanted to get it done. But I mean, you're right. I mean, it's one of those things. I mean, you know, the NBA runs its business all the time now. So but you're right. I mean, you definitely won't hear anything like that during the Super Bowl or even during the World Series. In fact, you always hear stories about managers or trades that get put on hold until, you know, the finals is over. So I was really shocked. I figured, you know, if nothing else, at least wait till today or tomorrow to announce it. But yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah, let's get back to the game at hand. Obviously, we just mentioned the Halliburton situation, a brutal blow for the Pacers. And I got to give the entire Pacers organization credit, because they could have folded from that moment. When you lose your leader, you lose your point guard, you lose with the heartbeat of your team that early in a game. And they battled, man. And they went into the half, you know, in great position. And the same thing that kind of plagued the Pacers the entire finals, the turnovers, reared their ugly head in the third quarter specifically. And that was all she wrote. You know, Bennedict Mathurin, 24 points, led the Pacers last night, 16 out of Spicy P, and TJ McConnell, who played an absolutely incredible finals series. And I think McConnell, for young ball players out there, is a hell of a thing to follow here. I mean, a guy who, hey, this is my job, this is my role. And in the entire series, he was fantastic. 16 points, 6 rebounds last night, the smallest guy on the court. The dude just got all battle in him. For the Thunder, I mean, no surprise here, 29 from SGA, 20 from Jalen Williams, 18 from Holmgren. They got 10 from Caruso, 10 from Wallace, just well balanced for the Thunder, probably their most balanced game of the entire postseason. And that 3 of Holmgren, Williams, and SGA makes history last night. Regular season MVP, conference finals MVP, NBA finals MVP. This Thunder team is going to be a pain in the ass to a lot of people for a long time, Mac.
Yeah, I mean, I was very impressed. SGA, I trying to find the right word to describe him, because, you know, he's kind of quiet in what he does. He's not like the flashy MVP, you know. It just, as you watch him, he's very sound in what he does. I love the way he takes the ball to the basket. It seems like he finishes every single time. But he's a different star. He really truly is. And I can't quite yet find the word to describe him, but it's real silent. Like you don't even realize it. And then boom, he's got, you know, 29, 36, 41, whatever it is. He just gets the job done. He was a lot of fun to watch. Like you said, a different kind of superstar, maybe because we're kind of starting to see a little bit of a different kind of NBA.
Yeah, the Thunder come out, no surprise, as the odds-on favorite to win the finals next year to plus 225. The Rockets, who we'll get to in a minute, now have the second best odds to win the title next season at plus 750. The Pacers, 80-1, and obviously a lot of that has to do with the amount of time that Tyrese is expected to miss here. But yeah, I think what we see in these two teams, and it's going to lead in, there's a lot going on this week, you know, with the NBA draft and free agency coming, and obviously we'll talk about it, but there's already been the moves, the one we alluded to. But this Thunder team, I think for the organization, there was a massive hurdle mentally to kind of overcome here. And you know, they had the Warriors down and out, and then the Warriors came back and beat them, and then Durant leaves. And that's something that, you know, has, so to speak, kind of hung over their heads for a while. Feel free to comment along your thoughts on the NBA Finals, your thoughts going forward. But Mac, I think both of these teams have kind of laid out what is the new NBA, and it's balance and it's depth, it's homegrown. And we've talked about this a million times, now going into this offseason, that we saw it last year with the Luka trade, obviously yesterday with the Kevin Durant trade. I think you're going to see more jockeying for trading players. A lot of teams don't want to get into those apron penalties and this, that, and the other thing. And it's I mean, there you go, right there. That's from a Thunder fan, one of the bigger Thunder fans I know. And I think that's the big thing. KD leaving, that was a cloud over them, and the damn Warriors. A lot of people were able to say the damn Warriors during the Warriors run, and I think you can strike a lot of similarities with this Thunder team to those damn Warriors, and the comparisons have been made, and obviously there's a lot for them to do to get to that level. But the Warriors did it with Curry, Thompson, and Green, and the Thunder are going to do it with Holmgren, Williams, and SGA. And here's the other thing that people need to remember too: Chet Holmgren, has missed more time than he's been on the floor in his first few years. He's only going to get better, and if this is the model of the NBA going forward, I'm really excited about the future of the league. We've got new broadcast partners next year. We were talking about it before we went on the air. I cannot wait to see the NBA on NBC back next year for a couple of different reasons that we'll get to. But I think this is the benchmark kind of model for every team in the league, is what these two teams did.
Yeah, I mean, it's about patience is what it's about. It's taking your lumps and finding those core guys, which is kind of interesting because Houston's kind of, I feel, and we'll get to that a little bit, kind of jumping the gun. But OKC did it the right way. They went about, they had some they tried it with their big three, it didn't work. They went back the other way, homegrown talent, and again, like I said, this was a fun series to watch because it's kind of funny. I say this, it kind of felt like basketball. It didn't feel like a video game, kind of going back and forth, and it felt more like basketball, and I think that's what made it enjoyable to watch. I love watching teams play defense. We saw that when they had a chance to run, they did. They used their depth. Coaches making great decisions. I mean, that's what basketball. I mean. In reality, that's what we love about college basketball, right? Like we like that kind of basketball. That's what if you're a basketball fan, that's what you yearn for. I think anyway. So that's what I like. But yeah, OKC, congratulations. And I know you can't probably wait to get started for next year already, but man, that is a really, really good team. I think they have a couple of things they can do to get better. But man, congratulations. And like I said, enjoy, but that's a fun team to watch.
Yeah, and the architect behind it all, Sam Presti, has done a fantastic job in just acquiring all the assets. And we'll get into some more of those as we get a little bit closer to the NBA draft. Obviously, we know the top prize in the NBA draft is, Cooper Flag. What happens after there? There's been some interesting stuff already going on. Teams that now have assets that we didn't expect to have assets, and how they going forward. It's the layout and the dynamic of the league is incredible right now, and I think we're going to see a lot more of that kind of take shape this week. Again, feel free to comment along if you're watching along. We appreciate you. Follow us on all of our social channels at Mike Arana Show, everywhere but Snapchat. And TJ's gone for a week, so I have to take care of this for him. We're not on Snapchat because we're not 12, and Snapchat sucks. And I think Billy V has an interesting point there, and it's kind of nails it dead on with the injury to Tyrese. The Eastern Conference is wide open next year, and we know the line of demarcation, if you will, in the NBA right now is the West is dominant. The West is loaded. The East, a little bit top heavy. And with, again, like he just said, with Halliburton being out, the East is kind of wide open. We know there's going to be moves made in Boston. Again, a team that doesn't want to pay that hefty tax. There's going to be some moves that are made there. Cleveland, I think, has some interesting decisions. I don't think you can roll out that double center motif that they have with Mobley and Allen anymore. We know the Heat are holding on to players that maybe you shouldn't be so locked into holding on to. The San Antonio Spurs in the West. I mean, when do they become a factor? And most people would say sooner rather than later. They were in on the Durant thing, but I think I see a lot of Bob Myers and Sam Presti in just the way, and I think there's a lot of people that call Bob Myers the architect of the Warriors, and I don't know if that's necessarily entirely accurate because Bob Myers inherited Green, Thompson, and Curry. Well, Bob Myers did a hell of a job at filling out the rest of that roster around those guys and was the guy who spearheaded the Kevin Durant deal. Ironically, when we talk about the Thunder, you Westbrook, Harden, and Durant, and all three of those guys ended up at some point now playing for the Houston Rockets. So I'm excited for the state of the league. I'm excited for what comes next. And I think, obviously SGA got a lot of the love and earned those 3 awards along the pathway here. But I don't think enough people are talking about how dynamic of a player Jalen Williams is. He gets it done on the offensive end. He's incredible on the defensive end. He's a 25-5 guy you can book him for pretty much his entire career there, and he's only going to get better.
Yeah, I mean, his stock went up a ton in the finals. A guy that we probably don't know a whole lot about, during the regular season, but his stock went way up. I mean, again, and that's the cool thing about Oklahoma City, just the role players, their ability to have all these guys help out, and like I said, they're going to be a tough team in the next couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, the excitement of what we've got going forward here is incredible. And congrats to the Thunder. Congrats to the Pacers on a fantastic season. They go to the Eastern Conference Finals last year. We talked about it. They got swept by the Celtics, but they were in all of those games. And then this year they take it a level up and they go to Game 7 of the NBA Finals in a series that everybody said at the beginning, OKC in 5, OKC in 4. And then the series gets drug out. And I do think when you look back at it, the Thunder really kind of took the series from Indiana in that Game 4. And I think that's the one that's going to kick the Pacers square in the junk is losing that Game 4 when they had the opportunity to go up 3-1. And we could be obviously entirely talking about a completely different situation if that happened. Now, it wouldn't have surprised me one bit if they did win that game, Mac, if the series still would have went to 7. I think that was the misnomer going into the series, is how evenly matched both of these teams were. They're very much copies of each other. We talked about the depth and the bench for Indiana for the entire series and how great Toppin, McConnell, and Mathurin were. All these guys are not going anywhere. The big decision for the Pacers is, and it sounds like from every report, that they are going to go into the luxury tax and they're going to keep Miles Turner there. And I think they absolutely should. I mean, the guy who's been through hell and back with that franchise, was the first guy every year. I mean, I don't know how many times I heard that Miles Turner was getting shipped to the Warriors. He stuck it out with him. And you got to love that in today's NBA. The guys that they stick it out with the same plays. And I think the Pacers are going to do what's right and reward him for that and keep him in town, because he is as much sewn into the fiber of the Indiana Pacers as anybody.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, last night you look at that game with Indiana, and if you would have told them, listen, you're going to be up 1 point at halftime, but you're not going to have your star in the second half, they would have taken that. Absolutely. The key thing for me last night was, Halliburton had 9 points, and Nesmith, Turner, and Toppin had a total of 9 points. So, here's this game where, you didn't get a lot of production from those 3 players. And with 5 minutes left in the third quarter, you're still only down by 5. This Indiana team is going to be really good. Yeah, they're going to have to figure out what to do without Halliburton for the whole season. And I mean, obviously, he won't be available in a postseason for next year for them. It's a big hole to fill, but at least going into the season, you're going to have that hole to fill, and so that'll be an interesting case. Do they try to find somebody to kind of as a year stopgap? It'll be interesting to see. But yeah, the East is going to be an interesting conversation for us. But the Indiana Pacers, again, just like you said, like Oklahoma City, they're not going anywhere. This is a good team as well.
Yeah, so congrats to the Thunder fans. I know that was a long time coming. Party it up. I think the parade is tomorrow, if I remember correctly. Speaking of parades, we're pretty sure the Stanley Cup is still drunk. A lot of people not liking how the Florida Panthers are going about celebrating. And my only response to those people whining and crying about it, go ahead and beat them, because you've got now in the NHL and in the NBA, in the Panthers and the Thunder, two teams that look like they could be having multiple parades for multiple years to come. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. As we alluded to yesterday morning, the Phoenix Suns finally agreed to a trade to send 15-time All-Star Kevin Durant to the Rockets for Jalen Green, Dillon Brooks, the number 10 pick in this year's draft, and 5 second-round picks. And I think there's some context that needs to be had here for people. A lot of people, when they look at these second-round picks, they go, oh, who gives a shit? There's 5 second-round picks. Those are assets to be accumulated and moved later. They are valuable, and the Suns did the only thing they could do. Nobody wants Bradley Beal, especially at $53 million next year, 57 on a player option after that, and a no-trade clause. The only move the Suns had to make was Kevin Durant. And they get back, a young Jalen Green who's still got tremendous ceiling. Probably going to be a good thing for him to just get out of Houston. They were pretty hard on him. Dillon Brooks, the Suns have had zero toughness for the last 5 years. We all know what he brings to the table, whether you like it or not. And the 10 pick in this year's draft. And the funny thing, the jokes of the calibration of the Phoenix Suns to the Michigan State Spartans are very prevalent out here in Arizona because of the way the whole thing's been run since Matt Ishbia took over. And the first thing that popped into my head was Jace Richardson's in this draft. How funny would that be if they took Jace Richardson from Michigan State? The Suns employing a kind of an interesting strategy here. They're going to run out 52 shooting guards and hopefully find a center. But again, it was the only move the Suns could make. I think they got back a good return. A lot of people saying, the initial reaction is, man, Houston massively overpaid for a guy on an expiring deal in Kevin Durant. Let me tell you this right now, for those of you that didn't watch the Warriors-Rockets series, the Rockets lost that series because they didn't have a consistent scorer on the floor. They just acquired one of the most automatic buckets we've seen in modern NBA history. Obviously, there's health concerns there. If Durant stays on the floor, I think the Rockets very much should be in the conversation for title favorites. And again, they have the second best odds going in here. But it's interesting to me because Kevin Durant now joins a guy that kept him from another ring in Fred VanVleet. There's some interesting things that Ime Udoka and the Rocket staff is going to have to do when you've got Şengün and Durant, Thompson, VanVleet, Jabari Smith. They got some interesting kind of size discrepancies around their positions here. But first thoughts on the Durant trade to the Rockets?
Well, if I'm a Phoenix Suns fan, I don't know why I would be disappointed. I mean, number one, you knew he was going to get traded. I mean, you want to make sure that you get something in return that's going to be helpful, and they did. They've got a couple of pieces that'll help them. They got some draft capital, and like you said, which is probably just as important as anything else. And now they have to start going and deciding, what they're going to do with the rest of this roster. The Phoenix Suns are not going to be done. Whether they flip some of those pieces that they just got in the trade. They're going to need a center. We know that. They may even need a point guard. I mean, the Phoenix Suns are going to be a very active team in the offseason. But if I'm the Phoenix Suns, I've got to be happy with what I've got. I mean, we heard a lot of different packages out there. This was as good as any. that they had out there. So I would be happy if I was a Suns fan.
Yeah, and again, I think that the misconception, the deception with Durant is, again, yeah, he has struggled to stay healthy, but we have to put this into proper context here. And Durant is such a polarizing player because he speaks his mind. He's not afraid to call people out on X. I mean, honestly, he's one of my more enjoyable follows on X. But the thing with Durant, an NBA best 49.7% on jumpers, 53.1 on mid-range shots. He also had the best shooting percentage on off the dribble jumpers at 50.9%. So for the analytical nerds out there that look at this stuff, and those are important numbers. Again, 49.7 on jumpers, 53.1 on mid-range, and off the dribble 50.9. Kevin Durant is one of the most automatic buckets that we've seen in the modern NBA. And the Rockets desperately needed that. And if they would have got that, remember this, they were the 2 seed in the West. They earned that because of the way they played. They bounced in the first round of the playoffs because they couldn't get a bucket. Durant gives them that guy and gives them that veteran presence there. I think for both teams, you look at this and go, this is a win-win for both of these teams, at least on paper, for whatever that's worth now.
Yeah, I mean, it's that thing. Whenever you make a trade, you would like the trade to be beneficial to both teams. And like you said, Kevin Durant, one thing that he does is he knows, he's going to score. And as you said, Houston needed that. Houston didn't have that consistent score in the half court offense. They were a really good defensive team. Is that going to take a little bit of a hit? Yeah, that still is. But Kevin Durant is not exactly a bad defender. We know that. I mean, he's going to be integrated into that system. Ime Udoka does a great job of coaching defense. That's still going to be a very, very good defensive team, maybe even a little bit better with Durant there. But listen, their main thing is they had to be able to put the ball in the net in a half court. Yeah, they could get the steals, but if they weren't getting the transition and the half court, they just didn't have that guy. They now have that guy. So again, and here's the thing, we talked about this. Houston still has draft capital. So what they traded away, yeah, they had, I mean, it says, oh my gosh, they gave up all these picks. Well, you know what? They got an Easter basket full of picks. So, I mean, this is, like I said, I think this is a perfect trade for both teams.
Yeah, and, I'm glad you brought that up because, we think that the Suns are not done. Obviously, the Suns are a little more handicapped at what they can do. They got assets back, which will allow them to do some things here. But again, those people that think Bradley Beal's getting traded, he's not, because he's got a no trade and nobody wants that contract. Interesting tweet yesterday from Giannis Antetokounmpo on X when the trade went down, and he just tweeted, "Oh," and that's it. And there has been some smoke around the fact that Durant and Giannis want to play together next year. I just mentioned some of the lineup quirkiness that the Rockets have to deal with. There is still a chance that the Rockets aren't done and aren't done in a massive way. And that massive way could be Giannis. And I think that's now, as we go into the draft this week and free agency, I think that's the next thing everybody's obviously got their eyeballs on. We knew Durant was going to get moved. And for anybody that's upset that, Durant forced his hand, listen, the Suns asked for Jabari Smith. They asked for Reed Shepherd. Houston wasn't willing to give up either one of those guys. They asked for Khalil Ware from Miami, which was another destination that Durant had indicated that he wanted to go. The Heat didn't want to include Jaime Jaquez, Nikola Jovic, Haywood Highsmith, the 20th pick. Say about that whatever you want. The San Antonio Spurs, the only 12 seed in the history of the NBA that has 9 untouchable players. The Suns got the best deal they could get. Durant got what he wants. The Suns got what they want. Again, it's a win. And more of this as we get later in the week. Again, with the draft coming up, we're nowhere near done on any of this movement here going forward. Let's talk about a couple sports that use white balls Baseball had an interesting weekend and an interesting week coming up. But let's go to Cromwell, Connecticut first. And the Travelers
Beautiful
Championship.
place. Beautiful place.
An absolutely amazing weekend for the PGA Tour as Captain America, Keegan Bradley, comes from behind in dramatic fashion on the 18th to capture his second Travelers in a tournament, Mac, that, you mentioned it in Mike versus Mac last week. The people of Connecticut love their basketball and they love their golf. And when they interviewed Keegan after the improbable come from behind victory, and you got to feel for Tommy Fleetwood. And Jim Nantz said this yesterday, and I think this needs to be put into proper context. Tommy Fleetwood's never won a PGA Tour event. Probably the most heartbreaking one that he was close to this weekend. But I think a lot of people forget this, and I'm glad Nance brought it up as they were walking up the 18th fairway right before they all hit their second shots. And Tommy Fleetwood went into this week 17th in the golf rankings, in the world golf rankings. I think a lot of people forget how good Tommy Fleetwood is because, as Scotty Scheffler said going into this past week, like, everybody uses the final score of a tournament to determine how tough the tournament was or who's good and who's not. Tommy Fleetwood's one of the best golfers in the freaking world right now. And I think we need to understand that. And I feel for Fleetwood. I really do. Obviously, financial benefit for me with Keegan Bradley winning this week, but that was crushing to watch.
Yeah, I mean, he is a really good golfer. He's very, very frustrating.
We'll get to the damn score of Mike versus Mac here in a minute.
He's frustrating to watch. I mean, because he plays so well, and then it seems like he just can't get over the top for whatever reason, especially here, in the PGA. But yeah, I mean, we know he's a good golfer. I mean, those last couple holes, I mean, you could just see he just started leaking oil. It's just like I mean that shot on 18 for him to come up that short, and to change clubs. I mean, that kind of indecision, you can just tell. Like, it was one of those things, like, watching it, you could see the wheels spinning, and he's like, "Oh my gosh!" Like, it's happening again. That just kind of the feeling that I got. Just had that look on his face, that oh my gosh, it's all happening again, and there's nothing I can do about it. But he just didn't play well enough those last couple of holes. But like you said, that last shot in 18, like, for him not to hit the green to come up that short, and then the chip to give Keegan a read, and it was kind of funny. Someone was talking to JJ Spawn in an interview and asked him and said, last week, if Victor Hovland would have been tied, or, like, do you think he should have chipped it not to give you the read on it? You know what I mean? It was kind of funny, and that was the same thing. Should he have maybe purposely, not try to make that putt, not give the read? It was kind of a funny part, but
yeah, no, that was it was Big Cat from Barstool when they sat down with JJ Spawn. I saw exactly what you're talking about there, and Bradley kept the pressure on him all day. The shot he hit on 9, the shot he hit on 15. And then 2 weeks in a row on the PGA Tour, we have that situation where a guy who's, in total contention going down to the final hole gives the guy who's chasing him a read, and both guys in Keegan Bradley and JJ Spawn were able to knock it in. And I was going to make the comment if Keegan didn't win, and I think it's kind of a moot point now, but I don't know if there's 12 guys, American golfers, playing better than Keegan Bradley going into this tournament. Now, with the win, and Amanda Balionis asked him this question on the green yesterday, and she goes, hey, you said that you would only pick yourself to play in the Ryder Cup if you earned it on points. So how does that change now? And classic Keegan, he goes, go USA, and walks off. I really hope he does, but I can understand the position that he's in, picking yourself. But we're here to tell you right this very second, Captain America, Keegan Bradley, there are not 12 guys playing better golf as Americans right now than you are. And just the way he grinded it out and battled it out. I mean, again, you feel for Fleetwood, but when Fleetwood left that chip short, you heard the gallery around the 18th green and they realized that Keegan had a chance to slide in the back door and steal it.
Yeah.
And Russell Henley shot to drop it, where if Keegan would have missed, we would have had a 3-way playoff, which is kind of what happens at the Travelers anyways. But just an incredible weekend. It's great for golf. I'm interested to see what the ratings were on that. Again, I don't really give two shits about ratings because I'm not the billionaire that benefits from it. But I would hope a lot of golf fans tuned into that to see that. The Travelers is always one of my favorite tournaments to watch because it is always exciting. All right, the aforementioned Mike versus Mac. Cantley, Bradley, and Griffin got me 17 points this year. That's our third win, by the way, this season in Mike versus Mac. So we're picking the winners at a decent rate this year. You had Finau, Thomas, and Rye. Tony Finau, rough week for him. They got you a total of 8 points. So the official scoring going into where are we at this week? I think we're at the Rocket Mortgage Classic, if I remember correctly, at the Golf Club of Detroit. Score going into the Rocket Classic, 233 for Mac, 195 for me. I made the claim that I was going to Paul Lawrie you down the stretch here. I will have the lead by the time we leave the Open Championship. Let's talk a little Major League Baseball. Feel free to comment along, even if you've got a snarky comment, Mama Mackenzie, about the score of Mike versus Mac. But baseball all-star stuff is coming out. You're going to have some thoughts on that tomorrow. We got through another interesting weekend in Major League Baseball. And last week, Mac, we talked about which division leaders were on the shakiest ground. And I mentioned the Mets because of the pressure that they were going to get from the Philadelphia Phillies coming up from behind. And the Mets are 2-8 now in their last 10, and they are now a wild card team, not atop the NL East anymore. Cause for concern with the Mets. What is going on in New York with the Mets? There's a lot going on in New York baseball-wise, period, right now, but let's focus on the Mets.
Yeah, I mean they've had some injuries with their pitching staff, and all of a sudden that offense. Apparently the offense is out in all of New York. There's no offense at all in any part of any borough of New York. But they're struggling, and it's going to be interesting. I kind of looked to kind of jump ahead a little bit. They have to play Atlanta, and not that Atlanta's lights out by any stretch of the imagination, but they're 7-3 in their last 10 without Chris Sale. But that's now another series that Atlanta is kind of fighting. Really, it's kind of funny. I know we haven't hit July yet, but they're kind of fighting for their lives, and this is a big series coming up against the Mets here in the next couple of days.
Yeah, and like I said last week, I mean, everybody's written off the Braves. They still have a lot of work to do, but in the National League, they're chasing the D-backs, the Reds, the Cardinals, and the Padres below the wild card line, your current wild cards. In the National League, the aforementioned Mets, they're a +3. The San Francisco Smoke and Mirrors are a +1, and the Milwaukee Brewers at 43 and 35. Here, the damn Brewers again, man. They're like a cockroach. Yes. You can't kill them. Did you happen to catch the Red Sox Giants series this weekend, by the way?
Bits and pieces. You know what? It's so I'm glad it's over. I mean, the whole Devers thing is become I don't even know the words. It's become really bad. It's just like every other, like we said, every other player that goes out of Boston, it's just become really, really bad. The Red Sox can't catch the ball. It has nothing to do with Devers, obviously, because he wasn't on the field ever. But they just can't catch the ball. If the Red Sox could catch the ball, they probably would have swept that series. But I joked with you the other day. I'd rather have one of those guys for the Savannah Bananas playing these guys, the Savannah Bananas. Playing, because not only do they catch the ball, they go through their legs and all kinds of other stuff, and they still get the guy out. We can't even catch the freaking ball.
Do you need a second?
Anyway,
you need to breathe. Take a deep
No, I'm
breath.
good.
TJ is on his
I'm
way
good.
to New York. Maybe we'll have him investigate what the hell is going on with New York baseball as a whole right now. He will be in New York all week. We'll see him a couple of times this week, but enjoy the trip, as TJ calls it, the aluminum flying tube. So not one of his favorite things to do, but maybe we'll put our crackhead staff on some investigation of New York baseball. Go ahead.
By the way, Wednesday, if you're a baseball fan at all, Wednesday afternoon, you've got to turn into this game. You know what game I'm talking about. I'm talking about Pittsburgh and Milwaukee.
Yeah.
You say, now why would I want to watch Pittsburgh and Milwaukee?
Well, tell us why.
Two guys. Skeens and
you're gonna butcher this.
No, I know. I was gonna say Mizorowski, but that's the wrong one. But
no, try again.
The Miz. It's the Miz. That's what. But these two young guys, two of the best young pitchers in baseball. The Miz. Yeah. I'm just gonna call him the Miz.
Yeah, and this whole thing, I'm getting a lot of flack from friends and family back home about why I don't believe in our Giants, if you will. And I've made my case perfectly clear. I was talking to my dad about this yesterday, and I've said it. If they go into the All-Star break in contention, hopefully they'll have Matt Chapman back by then, because then we'll get to see what this offense can really do together. But the Giants are now entering the stretch that I've referred to a bunch of different times here. They've got the Marlins, they've got the White Sox, they've got the Diamondbacks, where the injury hits just keep on coming with the Diamondbacks. Snake bit literally is the only way to describe them this year. Some MRIs coming on Corbin Carroll's hands. So they got the Marlins, and then they got the White Sox, and then they have the Diamondbacks. And here's the stretch where I'm going to find out if these Giants are actually for real. They've got the 4-game series here in Arizona against Diamondbacks, and then they're in Coors Field of California over 4th of July weekend. But then to go into the break, they have 6 with the Phillies and 6 with the Dodgers, and those are all home games. Coming out of the break, they have the Blue Jays, the Braves, and the Mets. That's where you're going to find out who these Giants actually really are. And again, I'll take all the flack that I want from back home. I mean, I'm telling you the truth here. This team is not good enough as currently constructed to beat the Mets, to beat the Dodgers, to beat the Phillies. I would question if they're good enough to beat the Padres in a series. We know the kind of magic that happens with the Padres when they get into the postseason. Some interesting series coming out of the chute. The Red Sox remain on their West Coast trip. They are now in Anaheim to take on the Angels. That's an interesting series. The Angels somehow, some way, are still sticking around, only 2.5 out of a wild card spot. You mentioned Pittsburgh and Milwaukee. The Diamondbacks have a get-right series against the White Sox. The Dodgers at Coors Canaveral. Interesting one here that I'm kind of looking forward to watching a little bit of this week is the Phillies are in Houston to take on the Astros. And we've talked about the Astros and how they just, speaking of cockroaches, how the Astros just continue to hang around and get the job done no matter how many times we count them out. And yet here they are again in that position. Cubs and Cardinals this week. You mentioned Braves and Mets. A lot of good baseball coming down the pike for us. So we've got shows all week, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Obviously, we've got the NHL draft, the NBA draft, more movement in the NBA, but it is time for the often imitated, never duplicated, because it's impossible to duplicate. Liquid locks. I don't have last Thursday's liquid locks in front of me. I think we were about 50%. So I got off the schneid, but not great. So tonight, I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to go with Arizona and the White Sox over 8.5. I'm also going to go with Pittsburgh and Milwaukee over 8.5. Put those two together. You've got positive money there. I'm keeping it simple because there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. Vegas Mac, take us down the road. Right. It is liquid locks with you.
Well, I am also, check this out.
Serpientes.
Going. Nice lip. Yes, I'm going in the Diamondbacks game as well. Ketel Marte, he is my lock to go deep tonight. I like the lid, though.
I might have to put those together because obviously correlating, if Marte goes deep, then, that means that the game's probably going over. I can't wait for 4th of July. Speaking of the aforementioned White Sox, the White Sox and the Rock Bottoms, 4th of July weekend. I am a glutton for punishment. I am a glutton for punishment because I spent yesterday digging up 360 square feet of rock in my friggin' backyard so we can get our pool in there. That's why I look a little lobsterish today. But
I'm going to call the commissioner. I think that should be a doubleheader.
The commissioner doesn't answer the phone. He's too busy holding John Fisher's hand. Did you see that circle jerk of a groundbreaking with the tractors behind him that were doing absolutely nothing? Like,
I did not.
Just when you think John Fisher can't look like any more of a jackass, and then he opens a microphone in front of himself again, and he compared people in Las Vegas and their love for baseball to cake, like literal cake. I mean, he just talk about just absolutely tone deaf and clueless, John Fisher. I mean, you spent a significant amount of time in Vegas, hence the name Vegas Mac. Did you ever associate your love for baseball while you were in Vegas to cake?
No, not once. Yeah,
not once, huh?
Yeah, not once.
Man.
No, not once.
John Fisher's got all the good stuff. Again, lots of stuff coming up.
Cake.
Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday this week we'll be with you. NBA draft. We'll get a little bit more into what's happening in the NBA. The NHL draft is coming up. Another interesting turn for the Blackhawks at the top of the draft. The Islanders, the Fish Sticks, with the number 1 pick. So a lot of fun stuff. TJ will have some thoughts on that. So for everybody behind the scenes, for TJ who's about to get on the aluminum flying tune, safe travel, have a couple of drinks, because I know he can't fly without having a couple of drinks. For Vegas Mac and the rest of the crew, I'm Mike. We'll talk to you tomorrow.